So I decided I was going to start prosecuting parents for truancy. Well, this was a little controversial in San Francisco. And frankly, my staff went bananas. They were very concerned because we didn't know at the time whether I was going to have an opponent in my re-election race. But I said, look, I'm done. This is a serious issue, and I've got a little political capital, and I'm going to spend some of it. And this is what we did.
I think it's rough because I asked the attendance officer, you know, could she help me or give me some, make up some hours or whatever I can do, and she told me that she didn't care and hung up on me.
These districts that get federal funds are required to not only accommodate these parents so that their child can be in a traditional education, but to make reasonable adjustments in their policy, which can include attendance.
Now, the school district superintendent says this is an extreme case and action simply needed to be taken. Worst case scenario for Andrea Black, she could go to jail and her son could be put in foster care. She says she is desperately hoping that that doesn't happen.
And eliminate taxes on tips for service and hospitality workers.
A few moments later.
Biden seems intent on taking your earnings hostage. Now, the IRS, they just announced this week that they want to start tracking all of the tips that workers earn so that they can be taxed for it. So much for Biden's sacred promise not to raise taxes on anyone making less than $400,000 a year. Remember, this is all part of Biden's so-called Inflation Reduction Act.
The yeas are 50, the nays are 50. The Senate being equally divided, the Vice President votes in the affirmative, and the bill, as amended, is passed.
So what has Kamala Harris done to earn you guys' vote? Besides the fact that she's a woman, besides the fact that she's black. You guys have the floor. Please, inquiring mind want to know.
Eliminate taxes on tips for service and hospitality workers.
Because when I get to office, we are going to not charge taxes on tips, people making tips.
It really is good to be back in Wisconsin. It is so good to be back in Michigan. Listen, let me tell you, I am clear. The path to the White House runs right through this state. And listen, I am clear. The path to the White House runs right through this state. I took on perpetrators of all kinds. I took on perpetrators of all kinds and had a summer job at McDonald's. I had a summer job at McDonald's. So hear me when I say, so hear me, Detroit, when I say, I know Donald Trump's type. I know Donald Trump's type. And are we ready to fight for it? And are we ready to fight for it? And when we fight, we win!
You have also been quite critical of Vice President Biden's policies on race, specifically on the issue of busing in the 1970s, having benefited from busing when you were a young child. Vice President Biden says that your current position on busing, you're opposed to federally mandated busing, that position is the same as his position. Is he right?
That is simply false. And let's be very clear about this. When Vice President Biden was in the United States Senate working with segregationists to oppose busing, which was the vehicle by which we would integrate America's public schools, had I been in the United States Senate at that time, I would have been completely on the other side of the aisle. And let's be clear about this. Had those segregationists their way, I would not be a member of the United States Senate, Cory Booker would not be a member of the United States Senate, and Barack Obama would not have been in a position to nominate him to the title he now holds. And so, on that issue, we could not be more apart, which is that the Vice President has still failed to acknowledge that it was wrong to take the position that he took at that time. Now, I would like to also talk about this conversation about Eric Garner, because I too met with his mother. And one of the things that we've got to be clear about is that this President of the United States, Donald Trump, while he has been in office, has quietly been allowing the United States Department of Justice to shut down consent decrees, to stop pattern and practice investigations. On that case, we also know that the Civil Rights Division, this is important, the Civil Rights Division of the United States Department of Justice said charges should have been filed, but this United States Department of Justice usurped, and I believe it is because that president did not want those charges to go forward, and they overrode a decision by the Civil Rights Division of the United States Department of Justice. Under my administration, the Civil Rights Division will reign, and there will be independent investigations.
Vice President Biden, I want to give you a chance to respond to what Senator Harris just said.
When Senator Harris was the Attorney General for 8 years in the state of California, there were two of the most segregated school districts in the country, in Los Angeles and in San Francisco. And she did not, I didn't see a single solitary time she brought a case against them to desegregate them. Secondly, she also was in a situation where she had a police department when she was there that in fact was abusing people's rights. And the fact was that she, in fact, was told by her own people, that her own staff, that she should do something about and disclose to defense attorneys like me that you, in fact, have been, the police officer did something that did not give you information would exculpate your client. She didn't do that. She never did it. And so what happened? Along came a federal judge and said, enough, and he freed 1,000 of these people. If you doubt me, Google 1,000 prisoners freed, Kamala Harris.
Thank you, Vice President Biden and Senator Harris.
But I need my president to tell me why I worked so hard all these years, all these decades. Couldn't get a business loan, but I bust my ass to get the money to create my business. And we got immigrants coming here. And they're getting money. Money! We're doing nothing but just being here. It's not right, and I want answers.
All right, Marlon, so I know how to make a mean pot of greens. In fact, people used to ask me to make greens for them for Christmas. One year, I had so many that I had to wash that we ended up washing them in the bathtub. So I am not playing around. So what you got?
Hi. Okay, so I'm on my lunch break, so it's going to be really, really quick. But I really needed to address what was just said there. I don't know anybody, especially a black woman, that is going to wash their greens in a bathtub. That is nasty, very nasty. Never in my 58 years of life have I heard my mom, my aunts, my grandmother, or myself saying, you know what, we have so many greens here, let's move this show to the bathtub to get these greens clean. What do you all think we do with our greens? We do not put them in a bathtub. It's called washing them in batches or using someone else's sink to wash them. But we don't take it to the bathtub. Gross. So whoever Kamala has advising her or coaching her on how to relate to Black America, they need to be fired, and they need to be fired yesterday, never to be hired again in any type of taxpayer job. That was extremely insulting, and I, for one, am very insulted by it. Do better. We are more than hot sauce. We're more than greens. We're more than fried chicken. How insulting and how racist can you be?
What else are you going to do to fix this problem with inflation?
Thank you. Well, let's start with this. Prices have gone up, and family.
This is what I be talking about when I say repeal the 19th, because she said nothing. The reporter asked, how are you going to fix inflation? And she tried to blame it on high cost of living, which comes from inflation. Federal spending contributes to that. So maybe we should look at the fact that we've been sending crazy amounts of money to Ukraine, to Israel, and all these other countries that have nothing to do with America. And maybe y'all can write something on her cue cards to actually help her answer these questions. She's running for president of the United fucking States. Can we get real?
If Kamala Harris wins the 2024 presidency, then the economic depression that was meant for Donald Trump will fall to her administration. And so this is a message for you educated liberals and progressives who somehow missed what's obvious about the economy. We can't afford to be progressive anymore. Like, we printed money, right? We opened borders, flooded the census, which indirectly impacted the cost of living to rise. That's why you can't afford anything. We could not afford to fund Ukraine for your democracy. We could not afford to fund Iran either, but we are. We're spurring World War III. We can't afford to do that, but we are. So here's my point. If you want to focus and fixate on Kamala Harris's genitals and her brown skin, I hope you understand political strategy is making a fool out of you. You see, it's Donald Trump that's supposed to take all the blame for the incoming economic depression. Now that you want to support Kamala Harris at the rate that you're supporting her, that guarantees that she's going to inherit it, and that guarantees that you're going to be going through a depression as an economy together while under her administration. And she just showed you that she's incompetent. She showed you, look at her resume on the border. She showed you that her Marxist subscriptions make her incompetent. They disqualify her from being the leader of the country. But you have to ask yourself, whose administration do you want to be under as you're going through a depression? Because strategically, the establishment has made a fool out of us. And we're also dealing with liberals and progressives who absolutely 100% show that they sacrifice everything for their ideology. You know, good for them, I guess. But at the end of the day, we have no business sharing a union from this moment forward. If you actually let Kamala Harris ascend to the White House and make a move to secede from the union, you have to make that your fight. You can actually make her presidency moot in your state. You can cut off the policies that travel from the White House to a state near you. You'd be safer going through a depression without Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris is going to be focused on taking your guns. She's going to be focused on all the stuff that women generally are, all the feelings stuff. Meanwhile, you're going to see an age where you have to protect your resources and your food and your families and yourselves. Do you want Kamala Harris to be the chief and commander? If you do, listen up. And this is not to be vulgar, but I hope her genitalia and her melanin and her strong black queen energy gets you through the economic depression that was meant to fall on Donald Trump's lap. Congrats, you got played.
Dr. Anderson said something really interesting. He said, stop lying to black people to vote. Vote for what? Ain't no one going to do anything for black votes in politics. Politics is controlled by money. It's very controversial to tell people don't vote. He went hard. He said, you're wasting your time. What's your position on that?
I share the same position as Dr. Anderson. He's spitting some good game. Don't vote unless we're getting something for it. We're told to vote for symbolic reasons. Vote because your grandma fought and self. That's a bullshit reason to vote. Your grandma didn't fight just to vote for the sake of voting. They wanted something for the vote. And with black people, we're told that we have to vote to help everybody else except ourselves. We got to vote to help immigration. We got to vote to help LGBT. We got to vote to help Obamacare for everybody. That's a slave mentality where we have to sacrifice things for ourselves so that everybody can benefit. That's slavery. We had to work on the plantation so that everybody else can eat. Damn that. If we're going to vote, we got to get something for our vote. That's why the reparations movement is so heavy right now. We're letting the politicians know we want tangible reparations specifically for foundational black Americans if you want us to continue to vote.
Tell me that the possible first black female president, her primary message, her platform is to promote the very thing that was meant to wipe out our race. That's what she's running on? Like, this is a joke. It's a joke. And then on top of that, y'all want to try to intimidate me and manipulate me into voting for her just because we are both black and we're both women. Let me tell you something. Identity is a foolish reason to vote for someone. And it's insulting for someone to insist that I firmly held belief
Okay. Is an Indian recipe.
Yes.
Because
Yes.
you are Indian.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, and I don't know that everybody knows that, but I find that wherever I go and I see Indian people at the supermarket, on the street, everyone's like, you know, Kamala Harris is Indian, right? It's like the thing we're so excited about to have you running for president.
Yeah.
So we're both Indian,
Yes.
but actually we're both South Indian.
Yes. You look like the entire one half of my family.
Okay, thank you.
You do.
I've been telling people
You
we're
do.
related already, so
Yeah.
this is perfect. It's basically true. And so, were you raised eating South Indian food?
South Indian food.
It's funny how people forgot about this.
Vice President Biden, I want to give you a chance to respond to what Senator Harris just said.
When Senator Harris was the Attorney General for 8 years in the state of California, there were two of the most segregated school districts in the country, in Los Angeles and in San Francisco. And she did not, I didn't see a single solitary time she brought a case against them to desegregate them. Secondly, she also was in a situation where she had a police department when she was there that in fact was abusing people's rights. And the fact was that she, in fact, was told by her own people, that her own staff, that she should do something about and disclose to defense attorneys like me that you, in fact, have been, the police officer did something that did not give you information that would exculpate your client. She didn't do that. She never did it. And so what happened? Along came a federal judge and said, enough, enough, and he freed 1,000 of these people. If you doubt me, Google 1,000 prisoners freed, Kamala Harris.
Thank you, Vice President Biden.
Black faces in high places are not going to save us. Just look at the black proponents of Cop City in Atlanta's leadership class. Black faces in high places are not going to save us. Just look at the black woman's hand, ambassador at the UN, voting against a ceasefire in Gaza. That is, our blackness and our womanness are not in themselves trustworthy. If we allow ourselves to be conscripted into positions of power that maintain the oppressive status quo, our blackness and womanness are not themselves trustworthy if we support the occupation of black neighborhoods with so-called better trained police, or remain silent about the genocide of oppressed peoples around the world funded by our tax dollars. And here, let me please shout out the incredible Spelman students and AUC siblings who have been organizing with Stop Cop City and Justice in Palestine, among many other troublemakers in this room. You all remind us that college is not a waiting room to enter the real world, but that you can start transforming that world right here, right now. It goes without saying, but let me just say it anyway. For student activists speaking out courageously for Palestine and Congo and Haiti and to stop Cop City, they should not be threatened with expulsion, loss of scholarships, or have public safety called on them for protesting. Too often, our institutions celebrate student activists after they've graduated, even giving them honorary degrees. Student activism while we are enrolled.
Uncle Scruff, what are we doing? What are we doing?